Okay, hello. My name is Todd Green. I'm the visiting assistant professor of religion here at Luther College. On the surface, it seems like, to the extent that this is a practice that could, in theory, maybe help the life of the embryo or fetus in terms of its development, and also potentially, in some cases, help or be of assistance to the mother in terms of her health, then I see in a number of ways how it could actually conform to many religious and Christian theological principles. I'm having trouble thinking of what would not justify this. I think certainly in terms of what would justify this, if the health of the mother and or the fetus is at risk, certainly that seems to be good enough justification to engage in this practice if theory becomes more of a reality and this can be done. I imagine in some Christian communities you can get into more of a debate over what effect this would have on abortion laws and abortion generally as a practice. Would you be able to avoid abortions altogether if, in theory, you develop this method to a point where you could take a very young embryo and bring it to full term outside the mother? So I can see how in religious communities today in the United States, if this became a viable option, this would significantly, I think, change the abortion debate. But in terms of the general health of the mother and the health of the infant, I think that would be the main purpose in terms of justifying it. And I could also see some controversy, I guess, on the other side, to the extent that some mothers may use this method in terms of avoiding the inconveniences of pregnancy, whether that be cosmetic or just the issues that come with being pregnant and being, say, a working person that men don't have to deal with. Whatever those debates are, from my perspective, when it comes to the health of either the mother or the infant, this is completely justifiable. Difficult for me to answer, as I'm not a mother. I think ultimately that question in some ways should be left into the hands of mothers themselves in terms of whether it respects their choice, their freedom to deal with their body as they deem fit. I'm sure within limits, but in the end, this particular practice, to the extent that it's a viable option and B, women are given some significant freedom to choose to do this option or not, then yes, it respects the mother. And to the extent that you would have maybe at a certain point a health insurance company impose this upon a woman, I think becomes problematic. And again, in the abortion debate, to the extent that you could start to make a case that abortion, for all practical purposes, should be banned if you can create an environment which allows the fetus to develop for most of that 8 or 9 month period to full term, that could end up imposing a decision upon a mother, which at least under current laws, there's some significant problems with that. And so those are the kind of the two different sides, I think, on whether this particular practice respects the woman or the mother in this case. But in the end, in my own view, it is to what extent does the woman have a free choice in whether to engage in this practice or not. That question, I know, will be particularly difficult in the years to come as this practice is developed further. On the one hand, to the extent that you engage in ectogenesis in order to protect the life of a fetus, that there's a benefit that in terms of taking the fetus outside the mother's womb into this artificial environment that would help it survive in a way that it could not within the womb. Yes, it shows an incredible respect for the fetus. To the extent that this becomes a practice used in order to avoid the inconveniences of pregnancy, I'm sure there's going to be much more debate in religious communities, potentially at least, over that practice. I don't know if removing the fetus from the mother's womb in itself, if there's enough evidence right now to lead me to believe that that's a sign of disrespect for the fetus. I think because the entire practice is geared towards helping to sustain life in this case, then it seems like you'd be hard pressed to say that it's overtly disrespectful. But yeah, I think generally speaking, particularly in terms of a practice that maybe the primary purpose is to help the health either of the mother, therefore respecting the mother's life, or the fetus in terms of its life and its best chances for coming to full term, then yeah, this is a practice that on the surface at least seems to respect the life of the fetus. I think in the end, at least from what I know about this practice and the way it's presented, it seems like the good ultimately outweighs whatever downsides there might be to this practice. The downsides, I'm sure, will become more apparent as the practice is developed, as this potential is made more into a reality and becomes more of a viable option for women, for families. But at least in my mind, particularly to the extent that this is a practice first and foremost geared at aiming to benefit the health of the mother and or the health of the embryo and ultimately the infant, then whatever downsides there are, if the health of both the mother and the infant is first and foremost a part of this, the purpose of this practice, then I think yes. Yes, I mean, and the parallels to the contemporary stem cell debates is very obvious here, and I have some ambivalence about this, and I hope this is not cheating, but part of me wants to say I just don't know. Ultimately, though, I do think that there is room for discussion on whether this is a viable option for helping to generate organs, for example, for organ transplants. You know, even though the fetus itself clearly is not going to survive the practice, I know that that is a very controversial, touchy issue for people in terms of whether it's respecting the life of the fetus in this case enough, or the infant to be. But what sometimes gets lost in that debate is also respect for life outside the womb, and to the extent that that someone else's life can be saved by this, I mean, that's something that we should talk about. I'm not sure I know the answer to it, but to the extent that the life of people living here and now can be aided by this, then we should be having the conversation. We shouldn't shut that conversation off. And to the extent that ectogenesis even creates possibilities in terms of research for helping diseases and helping to cure diseases that people deal with here and now, if there is a parallel to that to stem cell research, then yeah, that's something that should at least be on the table for discussion. I think, generally speaking, it could still be justifiable. You know, there are many couples out there who desperately want to have children of their own, and to the extent that this is a practice that would enable them to do that, I don't see why there would be any good moral reasons for opposing it, simply because adoption rates were lowered. So yes, I think I can get the other side of this as well, but generally speaking, I think even if adoption rates are lowered, giving families the possibility of having children with their own DNA, so to speak, their own genetic offspring, is something that scientists should certainly be endeavoring to do. And not to mention that in the big scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, it's not quite clear what the overall effect on adoption rates would be in the long run. But in the short run, yes, sure. If it enables the families, women, couples to have children of their own genetic makeup, then I think that's something scientists should endeavor to do. In my own mind, I see no reason why GLBT persons who are wanting to have children should be prevented from having children this way any more than men and women who are married or other kinds of couples who are together wanting to have children should have access to this as well.